Okay, g'day folks. So welcome back. I just want to make a quick video today. Look, the whole reason we go to work is to make ourselves a bit of money, to support our families. We all want to be able to go to work and come home safely at the end of each day. Now, in order to do that, we need to be able to be confident in what we're doing. We need to be well trained in what we're doing. And it's up to the employers and yourselves to look after each other. You've got to work together and get things done right. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. So, for instance, today WorkSafe put out a notification. Now, this is something that I've been trying to get through to people for a very, very long time, and it's something that people don't seem to be able to get their head around. Now, if you're operating a piece of machinery, let's take a overhead gantry crane. Even though you may not necessarily require a license to operate that piece of machinery, if you're going to be slinging a load on that crane, you still need to have a dogging license. Now, it is the employer's responsibility and part of their duty of care to make sure that you're actually qualified to do the task they do. Now, the problem with the gantry cranes and vehicle loading cranes, especially the ones under 10 tonne metres, are another perfect example. Now, while you don't actually need to have a high-risk license to operate it, same as the majority of gantry cranes, if you are going to be slinging a load, you still must have a dogging license. You need to be able to understand how to sling a load because things can become unstuck. And the notice put out by WorkSafe today was a company here in Melbourne. They actually did get fined for failing to provide and maintain a safe workplace. Someone who was operating the gantry crane didn't have a dogging license and they slung their load, and unfortunately the load slipped and they got caught under it and required surgery as well. Now, a lot of people do this without even realising it. They think, well, I don't need a license to operate this machine, so I can just hook the loads up and take it away. Well, although you don't need the license to operate that machine, if you are doing the dogging, you must have a license to sling that load. All right. Now, the employers should know better, but unfortunately they don't. So you can't always rely on the employer to know, but if you are getting a bit of a kickback from the employer, tell them to go look up some of the WorkSafe notices. And there's the one that came out today in particular, that because the person operating the gantry crane didn't have a dogging license, they were then held liable for not providing a safe workplace. As I said, same thing again happens with a lot of vehicle loading cranes, particularly the ones under 10 tonne metres where you don't need a license. If you're slinging a load, you still have to have an understanding of how to do this safely, and it is the employer's responsibility to make sure that you actually do have the correct licenses. Now, ideally, any safety officers on site should know better, but they don't. And that's one of my biggest problems is if you're going to take a job as a safety officer in a manufacturing or in a construction site, you need to have some sort of idea on what regulations pertain to that particular industry. Just holding a Cert 4 in safety or a diploma in safety doesn't make you a safety officer. You need to go in there and you need to find out what is required. Another perfect example of this was last year I went out, or it might have even been the year before, I don't know, it seems to getting closer and closer as I get older. But I went into a place where they do a lot of engineering, and I had to do some VOCs for their gantry cranes. Now, they didn't require a high-risk license because these cranes only did 3 motions, like most of them. They go north, south, east, west, up and down. But we did a short course on safe operation of that crane. And look, now the company did have most of the people lifting loads as dogmen. But when I looked around and I saw the size of the machines and the size of the equipment they were lifting, the equipment they were lifting was a bit overdone for the size of crane they had. So I sort of asked them how they go about doing it. And they said, well, we use the 2 cranes to do the lift. So obviously my next question is, well, who is an intermediate rigger. And boy, didn't that throw the cat amongst the pigeons. All right, now, it doesn't matter what type of cranes you're using. If you are using two of them, you've got to have an intermediate rigger to direct the load. So that went straight into their safety department, and to be fair, they did the right thing once they were given this information, and they did start training their people up. But they should have known better in the first place. And that's the problem. You can't rely on the employees to know everything because you don't know what you don't know. And look, even right back when I first started, even before I got any licenses, when I was just working as a TA, I do remember we were lifting 10-ton reactor doors off the reactors using chain blocks, and I thought it was just TA work. But it actually requires some rigging ability. All right? So just keep in mind that if you are slinging a load, you need to be competent to do it. How do you prove your competency? Show that high risk license. You need some form of training. Okay, now if you don't get the training, then how do you know how to inspect the gear? How do you know about the derations? Okay, you need that license if you are going to be doing that. Now, I actually believe that for a gantry crane or even the under 10-ton metre vehicle loading crane, there should be some formal training for that as well. Just because it's got a couple of joysticks on a remote control doesn't mean that the employer can just throw it at you and say, there you go, all right? He still needs to deliver some training in the operation of that machine as well. If you are operating a machine and you don't have a dogging license, have someone else dog the load for you, right? Have someone else sling the load up that is qualified to do it, that can inspect the lifting of gear, all right? Now, like I said, this was just going to be a quick video, but that is really one of my bugbears. The people that say, oh, it's only a gantry crane, you don't need a license. You're right, you don't need it to operate it. You still need to be competent, you still need to be trained in it. If you're slinging the load, you still need to have a high-risk work licence for slinging a load. I remember up in Queensland, I came across some councils that were using vehicle loading cranes. They weren't quite 10-ton metres, so they gave all their council workers a unit of competency in dogging or how to safely sling loads. That's not a licence. You need a licence to do this stuff, all right? So get onto your employers. If you don't know, you don't know. But get onto your employers. Tell them to, if they're not sure, tell them to ring WorkSafe and ask them themselves. Call some of your local RTOs. I'm sure they'll give you some right information. Although, keep in mind that some RTOs don't quite get it right themselves as well. Take it from me, if you are slinging the loads, you do need that license, all right? So don't get fined, don't end up going to jail, all right? Look after yourselves, look after your workmates, and make sure you do the right thing, all right? So that's just my quick one for the day. I hope you just take note, and I hope to see you again in the next video soon. Okay, thanks for your time.